Welcome, everyone. We're so excited that you've joined us this afternoon. You're here with Operation Parent and Song for Charlie out of California. It's a beautiful day here in Louisville, Kentucky, and we are so proud of that. We're coming to you from our nonprofit here, as I mentioned, in Louisville, Kentucky, called Operation Parent. And I am so excited that each of you is here to learn with us today. I'm going to start with just some opening instructions so you know how to participate. So first of all, a big reminder, in 24 hours, you're going to get the recording of the webinar, the certificate of attendance, as well as our link to the survey. And that will just take you a couple minutes to complete. You'll get it right after the conclusion of the webinar. And we utilize that to shape this webinar program. And those of you that have attended a webinar in the past have been so generous to fill out that survey. So please keep doing it and know that we use every piece of feedback that's offered there, and we are grateful for it. So I'm going to let you know how to participate today. You're going to use the orange arrow up in the top of your screen. If you want to tap on that, you can open up all the features of our GoToWebinar program. You are going to mostly use the question feature today. So you're going to put any comments, and they're going to come to Amanda and I privately. You can type questions there at any point during the program today. We're going to be moderating that, and we'll look forward to mostly what you look forward to at the end of our presentation. We're going to have a Q&A with Laura and Jen. So you're welcome to put any question that comes to mind at any point during the program there, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. You will receive a handout today, and that is a PDF of the PowerPoint that we are going to go through with you this afternoon. So you're welcome to download it right here in the system. So you'll see it right below the question section. If you just click on that white down arrow and then click on the handout, the PDF there, you're welcome to download it and save it for later. We recognize that not everybody is on their computer this afternoon. You might be listening on a phone or another device. And so we tried to help with that by sending you an email with the handout attached late last evening. So you should be able to download it here if you can, or check your email. Just make sure that you utilize the email that you registered for the webinar with. So just reminding you one more time that you will receive your certificate of attendance automatically if you're live with us on this presentation, and as well as the recording. So, and then take a couple minutes to do that survey if your time permits. I wanted to let you know that our presentation is going to be longer than usual. So probably a good hour and 20 minutes. And so if you're not able to stay for that entire time, we certainly understand. But know that you'll have the recording to finish it up later. But it's an amazing presentation, and we hope that you will be able to stay as long as possible. I'm going to tell you about the mission of Operation Parent. Let me first mention, okay, there we go. Operation Parent's mission is to love and support parents by providing real-world information, connection, and most importantly, hope. So I'm really excited next to introduce you to Jennifer Epstein and Laura Didier. But before I do that, if you could please also take a minute and think about registering for our next webinar. For those of you that have been with us for a little while, Beth Tyson was one of our past presenters, and she is coming back again to speak to us about children that have gone through trauma. So if you don't mind to mark that on your calendars, June 13th at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is when our next webinar will be, and register for that as you can. But now it is my most distinct pleasure to introduce you to Jen Epstein from Song for Charlie. We feel so lucky to have been able to get to know her as we were developing this webinar. She is a amazing human being and has just been a delight to get to know. So sad for her loss. She lost her 18-year-old Cal in December of 2020, and she has been powering forward through that grief and really made a difference in her school district in Beaverton, Oregon. They are using the Fake and Fatal campaign and fake pill awareness campaign in her direct county, and is making a huge difference. And so we wanted to take some time and introduce you to that work today. It's really great curriculum, and it's developed in a way that you could snap it right in to your school health curriculum. She's developed so many awareness resources. She's traveling around the country to meet with families and parents to build awareness for fentanyl. She has 20 years of really awesome experience and 12 years of working with schools and youth. And she's also worked for Fortune 100 companies. So we're really honored to have her here with us today. Laura with Song for Charlie also unfortunately lost her son Zach to fake pills also in December of 2020. She's the outreach coordinator and serves on the parent advisory committee. She's traveling right now today as she does this presentation for us. She is so passionate about warning parents, and also an amazing person to get to know. We feel blessed to know Laura. She is so strong. Both of these women are so strong and doing amazing things to advocate and to reach as many families as possible. So we're so thankful that you've taken time in the middle of your day to be with us. We were fortunate enough to be introduced to Song for Charlie in January when we did our January webinar with the DEA and Wendy Woolcock on fentanyl as well. That webinar is up in our webinar resource library if you would like to go to operationparent.org and check that out. We would love that very much. So just hang with us a minute. We are changing over controls of the webinar. There we go. So as we met Song for Charlie in January, we were introduced to Ed and Mary Tiernan, and Song for Charlie. They also lost their son Charlie to fentanyl and are doing amazing education campaigns around the country and really strong, deep work with curriculum. And so we're excited to introduce you more to Song for Charlie today and the resources that they've developed.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm so grateful to be able to be a part of this webinar and work in partnership with Operation Parent today.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. We are grateful to be able to partner with such a strong organization to spread our message to your community of parents and advocates. So thank you so much. So I'd like to start a little bit by talking about Song for Charlie and who we are. So Song for Charlie was created in the fall of 2020 by Ed and Mary Tiernan. Ed and Mary lost their 22-year-old son Charlie to a fake pill when he was a senior at the University of Santa Clara. And whenever they lost their son, they had never heard of fentanyl. They didn't know about this current crisis that was going on, and they did a little research about what was happening. And what they realized is that there was a lot going into this issue. It's an issue that has to do with the flow of drugs into our country. It has to do with youth mental health. It has to do with various laws around the consequences of having drugs, there's a lot that goes into it. And they realized that there was nobody warning the kids. So they created Song for Charlie for the sole purpose of warning young people and families about the dangers of fentanyl and fake pills. And so Song for Charlie works closely with federal organizations and other partners, so we have a good understanding of what's going on. It's important that we understand the drug landscape and can share that knowledge with the audience we're seeking. And we try to reach our audience through social media and through creating content and resources for schools and other youth-based organizations. And so you know, if you're interested in learning more about Song for Charlie, we encourage you to go to check out our website at songforcharlie.org. So in today's presentation, there's a couple things that we're hoping to do. First of all, we simply want to increase your knowledge about fentanyl and synthetic opioids or synthetic drugs and how they're making today's drug landscape more dangerous than ever before. We want you to take away a better understanding of how you can protect yourselves by increasing your knowledge, by just having awareness, and how that can protect yourself and your family and your community. As a part of that, we also want you to understand naloxone and test strips, where they work and where they don't. And lastly, we want to provide you resources that you can take back and share with your family, your schools, your community to spread that awareness. To kind of get us started, I just want to talk about where what happened and what the pivotal moment was. So if you look at this graph, it's a very simple graph where the blue line shows teen illicit substance use. So this is for the past 20 years. You can see that the blue line is on a trend down. Thankfully, there's been a lot of efforts, prevention efforts in our country. Parents are very engaged with their kids and generally are educating their kids on the dangers of substances. And the results are showing that teen substance use of illicit substances has been trending down for the last 20 years. And in this category, the illicit substances is, you know, are pills, cocaine, heroin, and the like. So by the end of, 2020, 2021, we can see that less than 10%, maybe 6 to 8% of teens had tried illicit substances. And so that is great news. The majority of kids are not using substances. Now, you can see the yellow line is showing also 14 to 18-year-olds, their deaths from overdoses or poisonings. And so you can see that the trend was that it was relatively flat over a 20-year period. And then beginning in 2020, there was a dramatic spike. There was a dramatic increase in teen deaths from drug use. And that particular spike was driven mostly by fentanyl. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Fentanyl, while teen drug use is down, the teen drug deaths are dramatically increased. And the reason why is that fentanyl is dramatically more dangerous than anything that we have seen in our history before. So that's where we are. I'm going to start off with our family story. This is Cal, and to most people, Cal would look like the average teenager, and you know, he was pretty typical. Of course, to our family, he and his brother Miles were the world. You know, we thought he was a bright, smart, caring kid who was on a good track. His high school years were pretty typical. You know, he was very involved. While he did some rec sports, he was more drawn to the theater, and he was very involved in his high school's theater programs. For pretty much all of his high school career, he was involved in the backstage of the production. So he was doing lights and sound and being stage manager, and that was his community. That was his group of friends. He also was, interested in having a job. So outside of school and theater, he was also involved in lifeguarding and became a swim instructor, and was a well-known swim instructor in our community, where young kids at Halloween time would knock on their door and ask for Coach Callie so they could say hi to him at Halloween. So he was very well known in our community, and had the reputation of being one of those kids who was able to cross all the social boundaries. He was friends with the jocks. He was friends with the theater crew. He was friends with the most studious kids. He was friends with the quietest kid in the room. A teacher once told me that he was the person who would get to class first, and then when every single person walked through the room, he greeted them with a smile and a short conversation. He was just one of those people. The beginning of senior year, we discovered that he was using marijuana. We had a discussion with him and set rules and set boundaries around that. That was not allowed in our home. And he told us that he was using it recreationally, and that he said, we got this, Mom, I got this. And we thought that, we thought things would be okay. Spring of his senior year, we discovered that he was continuing to use, and there was a problem. And after having discussions with him, we realized that he said that he was using marijuana because he had anxiety and was having a hard time eating, and he was using that to kind of help with his anxiety. Of course, red flags went off, major problem for us, and he knew it was a problem as well. And so we went through the process of finding him help. And of course, this was a hard time. This was spring of 2020, and as you all know, it was COVID. Things were starting to shut down. Unfortunately, we couldn't get him into the clinic that we wanted to, but we were able to get him some primary providers, some personal psychiatrist and a therapist, and he was very serious about taking care of his health. And we were proud of him because he knew he was not being healthy, and he wanted to fix that. And he was doing everything that he should be doing to get himself back on track. So this was COVID. Things were shutting down. He was missing his friends, but he was focusing on his health, and things seemed to be going on the right track. I think actually, we were seeing him turn, and we were pleased with the way things were. So in the fall, we had a decision to make because he had been accepted to go to University of Hawaii. He wanted to go off to school and to college for his freshman year. And so we consulted with his medical experts and had talks with Cal, and we all agreed that it would be a good thing for him to instead of spending his winter in Oregon during COVID, go to University of Hawaii, where he could have some independence. He could, have the experience of school. And then part of that was that he was to continue focusing on his mental health. And so he found his mental health care providers there and was continuing focusing on his health there. And, he went to Hawaii, and things seemed to be going well. I think with most kids there going off to school during COVID, there were a few bumps in the road. He, was disappointed that his classes weren't all in person. He was disappointed that the campus wasn't overflowing with students, but he was also making a lot of friends. His dorm room was right across from the bathroom, and he kept the door open all the time and pretty much introduced himself to everybody in the dorm every time they came to the bathroom. He also had a skateboard that he rode around campus and would wave to everybody, and had the reputation of being the kid that said hi to everybody and would actually even stop to people sitting in the grass and introduce himself so he could make new friends. That was just the kind of kid he was. We were thrilled that he was going to be coming home at Christmas time, and he came home for the winter break and was home for a couple days. And because it was during COVID and our family wanted to gather during the holidays, our family had agreed that everybody who was coming from out of town needed to get a COVID test, and Cal was all on board. He knew that was something he needed to do. So on a Sunday night, we had a conversation about his going to the test the following morning, and made sure he had all the information. He said, "Got it, Mom. I'm going to go tomorrow morning." And so we thought that was all fine. The next morning, my husband and I woke up and we realized the car was still there. He hadn't left. And so we went to go check on him and found Cal unresponsive in his bed. We tried to wake him and couldn't. And John started CPR. I called 911 and we sent our other son, Miles, to the curb to wait for the first responders. As I looked around the room, I found a small bag with a few pills in it. And I knew those weren't his regular anxiety medicines. I knew that was something different. And so when the detective came, I showed the bag to him and he looked at it and he said, this is, they look like Oxy, they likely are fake, and there's a good chance they're made of fentanyl. If you're the praying type, now's the time to pray. And that was the first time we'd really heard about fentanyl and learned of this epidemic. We got Cal to the hospital and he was there for a few days before the doctor said that he wasn't going to be able to come back. And so we said our goodbyes to Cal at that point. And that is how we got thrown into this. As we learned more about what was going on, we knew we needed to share Cal's story. We knew that we learned of this deception that is going on and how kids can easily get these pills, and knew that Cal had been deceived. He certainly did not make a good choice by reaching out to get Oxy on social media. And we don't know why he did that. We don't know if he was self-medicating. We don't know if he was just looking to experiment. We don't know. But we do know that the day before he passed, or the day before he took those pills, he had Googled what is Oxy, what is the safe amount for his weight, and how it would react with his anxiety medicine. So if he had heard about fentanyl, if he had seen warnings about fake pills out there, we think he would have made a better choice. He was trying to be careful, but didn't have the information he needed. So this is why we share our story, and we will share a little bit more about what's going on in a few moments, but I'm going to pass it off to Laura so she can tell you her son Zach's story.
Thanks, Jen. It's we share our stories so often and it just doesn't get any easier. And I'm not sure, Jen, I'm not seeing the Zach slide. Okay, I think we were going back to it. There we go. So this is my beautiful son, Zach, and he was only a 17-year-old. He was 17 when he was killed by a counterfeit pill. Before I talk about, what killed him and how he died, I always like to, like Jen did, talk about how my beautiful boy lived. He was just a wonderful young man, very similar to that, to Cal's personality, everybody's friend, warm and welcoming and inviting just to all types of people. Well known in our community, well loved. He was still in high school. He was a high school senior when he died. You can kind of see the different things he was interested in. He was in scouting and he was working toward completing his Eagle rank advancement when he died. He loved athletics, so he was a track star at his school, doing really well in the track team with the hurdles and the high jump. He also played soccer for many, many years with a great group of boys. They played together for 6 or 7 seasons, and those remained his best, tightest group of friends up till the point that he passed. He also loved music. He taught himself how to play piano. That was his favorite instrument, was the piano, and he loved the ukulele. He was actually really, at the time of his death, he was getting a lot more interested in getting more proficient at the guitar and the ukulele. And in the top center, you can see his arms outstretched. That was for a very large concert when he was in orchestra in middle school, and they would do an annual concert where they would bring in the 2 high schools and the 2 middle schools and combine all the orchestras to play together. And he was in this sea of hundreds of students, and I hollered at him to take a picture, and he put his arms up like that because he was just so happy and full of joy to be there participating. He was a happy kid from the get-go, just really had this very gregarious and charismatic personality. And like I say, he was just really loved by everyone. And with Zach's story, it was also 2020, COVID lockdown time, and Zach was a very busy boy. He was involved in all these things, as I mentioned, and he had a large circle of friends, tight friends, and they would do a lot of activities together. So when COVID happened, the lockdowns happened the end of his junior year. My ex-husband and I, who are very plugged in parents, very warm co-parenting, relationship, we said, we'll keep an eye, on Zach's mental health because he's used to being so busy and out there and doing all these things. So we were very plugged in, observing how he was handling all of it. And truthfully, he seemed to be handling it as well as we could have hoped, obviously expressing frustrations, disappointments. We all assumed by the time he started senior year, everything would have opened back up again. Who would have thought that it would go on for as long as it did? But he was still excelling. He also loved school, so he maintained straight A's throughout his education. So it was the holiday break of 2020. My other two kids, I have two older children, and they were all studying remote from college back at home. So, and they had never struggled with any substance issues. So we thought, our kids were kind of, not being impacted in any way by substance issues. And so we had a lovely holiday in 2020, and didn't really observe anything other than on Christmas Day. Zach seemed kind of more fatigued, than normal on Christmas Day. And he spent that day, the morning we all spent together, my ex and the kids and I spent the morning together. And then the kids and I went to be with my parents, and he still was kind of, just kind of tired. But his reasoning was very plausible. He and his friends were staying up, communicating on their games and things. And he said, "I lost track of time, Mom. It was just really, really late when I went to bed, and that's why I'm so tired." It seemed very plausible reason. But 2 days after Christmas, the kids were with their dad, Chris, and it was midday, and Zach hadn't, come down. It was not uncommon for him to sleep in, and Chris thought, let me go see if Zach's ready for some food, and went up to Zach's room, and he came upon Zach sitting at his desk. It looked like he just laid his head down on his desk to go to sleep and get some rest. But as Chris got closer to Zach, it was clear something was dreadfully wrong. Zach's body was cold. He was unresponsive. Chris immediately started administering CPR. Our, at the time, 22-year-old son Sam called 911 and assisted, his father in counting the CPR. And then it didn't take them long, to realize that Zach had been gone for hours and there was no hope to bring him back. And my daughter, who was 25 at the time, had to call me, and I was coming later that day to the house, but she just said, "Mom, you need to get home right now. Zach is dead." And so when I got there, there was just 10 or 15 minutes or so, and they were starting their search. Why would this young, healthy, happy 17-year-old young man be deceased? We had to wait outside for hours while they conducted that investigation. And, unlike in Cal's situation, they didn't find any pills or drugs in his room. We had shared with them he didn't have a history with any kind of a substance use disorder issue. But it was the coroner, when her office came to get Zach, that was the first time I heard fentanyl, because she speculated that, even though they hadn't found any pills in his room to give a clear indication of that, they said, "We are seeing this very alarming uptick in deaths of young people in our county, Placer County, just outside of Sacramento in California, that we're gonna speculate that it was fentanyl that took your son." And we were blindsided and just grappling with this news, because we had never heard of this crisis. We had never heard of counterfeit pills. We had never heard about fentanyl, illicit fentanyl. So this was really information that we were struggling to wrap our brain around. And in the 6 weeks or so it took to get confirmation that it was fentanyl that ended his life, Chris, his father, and I, we just did a deep dive into researching what was going on in that process, came upon Song for Charlie. So we got pretty connected pretty soon after losing Zach to Song for Charlie, and just the mission of warning young people resonated so strongly with us, because here was Zach, someone for whom, we hadn't really seen red flags other than fatigue on Christmas Day, which is not uncommon for a teenager. It certainly didn't seem an out of character thing, and we just really saw the disbelief on his friends' faces when we had to explain what had ended their friend's life. And we thought, oh my gosh, we need to be a part of the solution here and educating young people, because Zach's story, being still in high school, it just really kind of typifies this new layer of this crisis, with these young people succumbing to fentanyl, whether it is in a self-medication situation, an experimentation situation. With Zach, like with Cal, we don't exactly know what led him to make that choice to try what was being marketed to him as a Percocet pill. It was a dealer operating on Snapchat, putting up menus of pills, and it was a very out of character choice for Zach to try one. But we've come to find out later, he and a buddy each tried one pill on Christmas Eve, and for some reason Zach decided to try another one on December 26th, and that was the pill that ended his life in his room. So what is fentanyl? As you've heard from me and Jen, we were not familiar with what was going on, and we find that there's a lot of people out there who maybe are recognizing the word fentanyl, but maybe aren't exactly aware of how it's impacting people, this illicit form of fentanyl. So fentanyl is a legitimate pharmaceutical drug. It was created in the 60s. It's been in legitimate medical use since that time, but it is highly regulated. It is dosed in micrograms because it is so much more potent than anything else out there. As you can see in the slide, 100 times more powerful than morphine and 50 times more powerful than heroin. So when it is administered in a medicinal way, it's highly regulated and highly monitored. Often it's given to a patient in hospitals where there is staff right there to monitor if they are having an overdose reaction to the fentanyl, and they can be brought back from that. But this synthetic illicit fentanyl that's on the street is not the same as the pharmaceutical fentanyl. This is not what's on the street, has not been diverted from pharmaceutical labs. This is being created clandestinely from the start. Chemicals are being sourced generally from China, and illicit manufacturers are putting them together in garages, basements, rudimentary labs with no quality control, with no measurements. And that's what's making it so deadly, because so little can go so far, and is so deadly. And then we've got a video that we created at Song for Charlie, and it really gives a great overview. It's a 4-minute video. I always recommend, when parents ask me, how do I start this conversation? It can be an uncomfortable conversation. I want to make sure I understand really what's going on. I always recommend this video. You can find it on songforcharlie.org. We also have a subtitled Spanish version, just to really make it accessible, for families. So I encourage you just to watch this film. It really gives a good overview of the crisis.
Amanda, you're pulling up the webinar or the video?
Yes, give us just a minute. We're working on it. Thank you both for sharing so deeply. You're getting a lot of kindness and love in the chat right now.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Very appreciated.
The video is not currently able to play, but we definitely encourage everyone to go to this link. You can find it in your handouts. You should be able to click on that link and definitely go check it out on YouTube and everything. But so we'll just go ahead and continue. thank you all. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Oh, would you like me to see if I can pull it up real quick? Let me
It
see.
won't work that way.
Okay.
Yeah, well, definitely go to songforcharlie.org and go to resources, and you'll see. Oh, just heard it.
I thought was a prescription pill.
Okay. So I think we're going back to you, Laura.
Okay, great. So this is what's really going on right now and why this landscape has changed so dramatically. We have gone from the farm to the lab. So it used to be when, those of us in our middle-aged years were growing up, any of the drugs that we might encounter would have been, sourced from a farm. They would be coming from plants, organic, and that is what has really changed. These new synthetic drugs, they are created in labs. And when you're dealing with farm source drugs, it does limit the supply because you have to have land, you have to have farmers, there's a lot of overhead in doing that. You have to be able to extract, from the plants, and there's a lot of processes that go into that. And the seasons might not be in your favor one year, and your yield is smaller. And of course, when the yield is smaller, the prices go up. But with the lab sourced drugs, it is very cheap to make. There's an endless supply of these chemicals. It's not a complicated recipe, unfortunately, to synthesize fentanyl. The chemicals are very, very easy to source. So large batches can be made. Very little goes a long way, so it's a lot easier to smuggle. And hide because as you can see in that one picture at the bottom, that amount of fentanyl on the top of that pencil, that's the amount of fentanyl that could kill an adult. It's not that much. So when you're talking about smuggling these drugs in, it's pretty easy for them to hide them and ship them into the country. And there's no quality control, as I mentioned, with the way that these are put together in these clandestine labs. And the dosage is inconsistent. So one thing that's touched on in the video is that when they are putting together these pills, they mix a powder and in its filler material and fentanyl. Well, fentanyl is a powder, so it can tend to clump together. And so then when they're pressing these pills out, there's no content uniformity in these pills. And we like to refer to as the chocolate chip cookie effect. So when you're making a batch of cookies, you may have one that's loaded with chocolate chips and one that has very little chocolate chips. And if you hadn't gone in meticulously to count each chip in each cookie, you wouldn't know. So I think my son's story is very, very much illustrates this. He had tried one pill that he thought was a Percocet pill on the 24th. That one must not have had much fentanyl in it. It probably gave him a false sense of security that Percocet's not that big of a deal. But then when he went to try another one on the 26th, that pill was loaded with fentanyl. And so that's why it's very important for especially when we're talking to the young people, that they understand that no two pills are alike, and how that just really increases the danger level. And unfortunately for these traffickers, we'll get this question all the time. I don't understand why they would use a substance that can kill their customers. This doesn't seem like a good business model. The thing is, this is actually the best business model they've ever had. It's cheap to use. These pills, they can make fentanyl for pennies, and it's pure profit. And unfortunately, some deaths like Cal's death and Zach's death are the cost of doing business to them. So this new deception is what is, another reason why this landscape is so dangerous. It used to be, back in the day, as they say, if you were buying something, really the risk more that you would take is that something had gotten watered down and cut with benign products so much that it would be very, very weak. And that was kind of what would happen in the past. Well, now they're cutting things, fentanyl's being adulterated into all types of street drugs. These counterfeit pills have just proliferated in the market, and you don't like I say, with the quality control, it's not there. And these deceptive practices of creating these pills that are made to look like legitimate pharmaceuticals, like a Percocet, like a Vicodin, like a Xanax. This is a new dynamic of this counterfeiting with the purpose of deceiving. And and our young people are particularly vulnerable to this because this generation of kids has grown up with prescriptions being so normalized. When I was growing up, it was really just my grandparents or someone's, battling an illness, a serious illness that might have a prescription. But now prescription pills are so common, and many young people have had their own prescriptions, legitimate prescriptions. So these nefarious actors are really capitalizing on that to connect with young people, to give them this false sense of security about what they're taking, to hopefully get them addicted to fentanyl and get them coming back for more.
So I think we can expect that it is not unusual for young people to be exposed to a situation where they may be offered drugs. It has been happening for decades, and I don't think it's realistic to expect that a person's never going to be exposed to that. Hopefully they won't, but whether they go to a party and somebody offers them a pill, or they go to or on social media and something pops up, unfortunately it is a part of society today where that is a risk that kids need to be aware of. In the past, of course, we hope that the person declines. A young person is going to decline an offer for a pill or choose not to reach. And we see that due to our prevention experts, the numbers are going down. As I showed you at the beginning, less than 10% of young people, of teens, are choosing to try illicit substances. But if somebody did try to use an illicit substance in the past, drug use was kind of like a journey where somebody might experiment and recreationally use something, and then if they weren't careful, they might develop a dependency. And then if that continued, perhaps they developed a substance use disorder. And the drug journey could take many, many years. And there were opportunities for people to step out of that path. They could, either perhaps they were graduating from high school or college and realized that they needed to get their act together, and so they stopped recreationally using. Or perhaps if they did have some sort of substance use disorder or dependency, a friend or a family would notice and step in and encourage them to get help or help them to get back on the right path. The problem is with fentanyl, drug use is no longer a journey. It's more like a minefield where the first step that a person takes could be their last or the next one. You just don't know what you're going to get. Each time you take something, it's like playing Russian roulette. Each time you're taking something, it's a risk. These are pictures of young people who decided to take a risk and lost their lives from it. These young people all lost their lives in the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years. And I want to share some of their stories because I think their stories kind of show how easy it is for a young person to make a wrong choice. So if you look at the Luca, who's kind of near the top left corner, he was 13 years old. He had a root canal and was having some lingering root canal pain. And he had an appointment scheduled for later in the week, but as the pain was still bothering him. He was playing online video games with a group of his friends and complained to one of his friends or to his friends online. And one of his online friends said, well, I can get you, I have some Percocet. Why don't you take a Percocet? And Luca, he perhaps had heard of Percocet before. That is something that is sometimes given for tooth pain. So Luca thought that he would try Percocet. His online friend came to his house and delivered a Percocet to Luca. Luca ran downstairs, got it, went back up to his bedroom, sat on his bed to continue playing video games, took that Percocet. A few hours later, his dad found him and he was gone. So Luca chose to take something that was offered him for tooth pain. Pretty typical story, or pretty simple story. Isaiah, who's a couple over to the right, Isaiah went to the mall with a group of his friends. As they were finishing up at the mall, he texted his dad to ask if he could go to his friend's house to hang out afterwards. And his dad said fine. So he went to his friend's house. He and his friends were in the basement hanging out, again, playing video games. And for some reason, his friend's older brother offered Isaiah a Percocet. I don't know why Isaiah chose to take that Percocet, but he did. And Isaiah went and lay down on the couch behind where his friends were playing video games. His friends saw him there and just thought he was sleeping. Didn't think anything of it until about an hour later when they tried to wake him up and they couldn't. At that point, they called an ambulance and got help. And he made it to the hospital, but like Cal, he never recovered. A few days later, they had to say goodbye to Isaiah. And there again, we want to highlight the the fact that it is so easy, and his friends were there, and the friends just didn't know. And so it's important that young people today know what's going on so that they can help their friends. On the bottom right here corner is Kirsten. She was invited to go to her best friend's house for a sleepover, to hang out and watch a movie for her friend's birthday. They watched a movie together, and then her friend said that she had seen some pills online and just wanted to try one, and wanted to know if Kirsten was willing to try one with her. Wanting to be a friend, she said that she would do it with her. And so they ordered 2 pills over social media and got those 2 pills. They took a pill, and Kirsten lost her life. Her friend survived. And so again, this is a situation where Kirsten wasn't necessarily seeking something, but a friend offered it to her, and she chose to try. And she lost her life, and her friend, this just shows how difficult it is, because the dose from pill to pill varies, and there's no knowing what's in it. So one person can lose their life and the other person can survive. On this page are pictures of young people who lost their lives from a half a pill. And so, as Laura said, the pills are so unpredictable. One pill might have enough to kill multiple people, and another pill might have barely any. And just cutting a pill in half isn't enough to protect yourself. You don't know what's going to be in that half of that pill. Unfortunately, these kids were trying to be safe by only taking a half a pill, and lost their lives.
So it's really important for everybody to understand what an overdose or fentanyl poisoning is going to look like, because it's not dramatic. It's not like you might see on a movie or TV. And with the way fentanyl is everywhere and so easy to access, even for our kids, we really want people to understand what it's going to look like, what to look out for. So what happens with fentanyl when it comes into your system is we all have opioid receptors in our brain, and fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, and it will attach to those receptors. And what makes it so potent is it is incredibly efficient at attaching to that receptor and crossing into the blood. That's why it starts acting very quickly, and people can come out of it quickly as well. But if there is not someone there to notice that you're having this overdose reaction, your life can end quite quickly within just moments, in minutes. So what happens when that attaches to the receptor in the brain is it suppresses the body's natural drive to breathe. So of course, when we're sleeping, there are certain things that happen in our body that kind of go on autopilot. Our heart will keep beating, our breaths will continue on autopilot, even if we're, in a sleep state. But what happens is this opioid will attach. It will put you into such a deep state of sleep and get those respirations down so low that eventually the respirations will stop, and without air and oxygen, the heart will stop. So if that is happening to someone, what you'll observe is lethargy. Maybe you won't be able to wake them up, like in Isaiah's case. If you open up their eye, open up their lids and look into the eyes, that center part, that pupil, will look like a pinprick. It will be very, very constricted. The breathing will become really shallow and very slowed down. As that continues, you might hear gurgling or snoring, and that is the body really trying to grasp and gasp for that air. The body will be very limp. Depending on your skin tone, your skin will be pale or gray or ashen or blue. As well, your lips and your fingers and things. So it's very, like I say, very important for kids when we're speaking in schools. We let the kids know, hey, if you're in a situation where you suspect a friend could have come in contact, with fentanyl, check on them. It used to be, people, if they were in a party situation or a sleepover or something, and you might say, oh, they'll sleep it off, they'll sleep it off and be okay. But we really are in a situation now where if you do see a friend or someone nodding off and they cannot be woken up or revived, it's a good idea to respond as if they are having a situation. You want to call 911 immediately. Immediately, minutes matter in these situations. If you have naloxone on hand, you're going to want to administer that right away until the first responders can get there. So a little bit more about naloxone and test strips. So one thing we also really want to make sure, that people, especially our young people, understand is that if you are experiencing a reaction, an overdose reaction to fentanyl, a poisoning reaction, you will be incapacitated. You will not be able to administer Narcan to yourself. It needs to be something that a bystander is observing that you need this kind of help, and they have the Narcan and they can administer it. The very good thing with Narcan is the brand name of it as it's sold in the nasal spray. Naloxone is the medical name for the medicine. And so you can be assured that if you are administering to someone that is not in an overdose or poisoning situation, you will not hurt them. It's a benign medication if someone is not having a reaction to fentanyl. It does not mean that you shouldn't call 911, because often, depending on how much fentanyl is in someone's system, 1 or 2 doses of Narcan is not going to be enough to get them out of that reaction. If you buy a box of Narcan, it's going to have 2 doses in it. But I've done presentations with first responders who have said they've had to administer up to a dozen administrations of Narcan on the way in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, because there was so much fentanyl in that person's system. And it's also important to know that if you are giving life-saving measures in good faith to someone, and they still do succumb or something happens, you will not. There are Good Samaritan laws in 48 of our 50 states. I believe it was Kansas and Montana. Is that right, Jen? That are.
Was it Wyoming? Kansas, Wyoming, maybe?
Yeah, I have it on my phone right here. I had taken a note of that. It is, well, we'll grab that in a minute. I'll look that up in a minute. But most states do, because they understand, that if someone is trying to give life-saving measures in an emergency situation, that they should be protected. So we tell, young people, even if you're at a party situation and maybe there's alcohol there or there are things and you don't want to get in trouble, the first responders aren't worried about that. They want to get there. They want to save that life. They want to make sure that life-saving measures are rendered immediately. And so those Good Samaritan laws are going to protect people that are reaching out to get that help for someone in distress. And then with fentanyl test strips, and they talked about it in the film, so that is covered in the film that hopefully you'll go back and access. They have limitations. I mean, they definitely have their place in harm reduction, but we also want kids to understand that they're not foolproof, that it's not something that you can count on with 100% certainty, because they're designed to test liquids, so they can be not a guarantee of safety with the pills. And especially if you get something in pill form, you will know for sure it has not been tested, because the only way to test a pill is to grind it down, liquefy the pill, mix it with water, and test that liquid that you've ground down. But it may not pick up every analog of fentanyl. There's ways they can tweak the fentanyl recipe, and one analog may or may not be picked up. And then there are new synthetics on the horizon. You've probably been hearing in the news, xylazine, the horse tranquilizer, and other synthetics that are being introduced that would not be detected by a fentanyl test strip. And basically what I tell kids in my area, our crime lab has told us that 99% of the pills that they confiscate are counterfeit and have fentanyl. So, I basically tell the kids that I'm talking to, I can just tell you right now, if you get a pill outside of a pharmacy or your doctor's office, it's going to contain fentanyl. And a test strip's not going to tell you how much or what analog, or if there might be other stuff in there that's harmful to your body. So it's just good to understand kind of the limitations, so that especially our young people can make informed choices. So this is really illuminating, this slide here. With Song for Charlie, as we've mentioned, our whole goal is to educate kids so that they can make safer decisions, better informed decisions. What we like to say, and others like to say, is kind of a play on the old "just say no," NO, which we know, maybe was not the most effective way to message to young people. What we like to say now is just say no, KNOW. Know what's out there, know what the risks and dangers are, know how to keep yourself safe. So we also at Song for Charlie, we really wanted to make sure we understood where the knowledge gaps were with kids, so that we could really target our messaging to fill those gaps with the necessary information. So you can see here we had conducted a study in 2021, and then we repeated it in 2022. So the white bar is going to give you our data from 2021, and the yellow from 2022. And so you can see when we are asking the kids about their awareness level of fentanyl and fake pills, it's still well below 50%. A large percentage of students are still not aware that there's these counterfeit pills out here. And we can see that the awareness messaging is working, that knowledge gap is closing, but it is still not nearly where we need it to be. And then on the other side, you can see where we ask kids, and you can see this from 13 to 17, to rank the danger level of fentanyl. And it's very clear that most students do not rate it as dangerous as where it should be. It should be by far at the top of that list, above cocaine and heroin, and it is not right now. And yet fentanyl is what is killing so many more, 12 times more fentanyl deaths than cocaine deaths are happening in this age demographic. And we know that when students, young people are smart, when they have solid information, when they understand what's going on, the vast majority of them will make better informed choices. And so it's really important that we empower our teens to be a part of the solution. I know that Jen and I both experience just incredible interactions with students when we talk to them. It engages when they hear about Cal and Zach, and they can see themselves, they can see their families and our families. It engages their empathy, and that's a wonderful thing. But when those activated students can then go and become the messengers to their peers, that's really the next level of this that is going to protect so many kids. So we try to make sure kids understand, like that first slide, that hey, it's not the norm that most of your peer group is using drugs. It's actually so awesome that now more than ever, most of your peer group is not. But what's so tragic is, of those that are, the death rate is just unconscionable, and you guys can be a part of the solution to make sure that when you get educated on this, that you're sharing that information, that you can follow Song for Charlie on our social media and share that content with your peer group. if you understand what to look for in terms of the overdose symptoms, so that you can recognize something, in a situation like something with Isaiah, where if his friends had been educated about the signs and symptoms to look out for, they may have been able to get him help in time. And so really to know what the drug landscape is all about, to understand where your safe resources are to go for help. If you are struggling with mental health issues, I know when I'm speaking at schools, I have a good relationship with the counselors at that school that can make sure, to let the kids know where their safe resources are on their campus, where their safe resources are in their community, and just really to normalize conversations around mental health and asking for help. And at the end of the day, to make sure that they are not taking any type of pill that hasn't been prescribed to them and given out by their pharmacy. And kids are really incredible messengers of this, and we've had so much success out here in my area. Zach's high school has a broadcasting class, and that broadcasting class made a PSA, a 20-30 second PSA on fentanyl that has been widely shared in our area. And those types of things, I mean, kids are in a very powerful position to make a difference, and it's incredible.
Right. I'm going to be going over the last section here, and there's going to be a lot of resources. This first section will be addressing to parents, and the next section to schools. I'm going to go through it relatively quickly just because I'm going to give you some suggestions and resources, and you can go back and look at these resources. So we are in the home stretch here. So for parents, what you can do, first of all, we need every parent to recognize this could happen to you. Laura and I, we had never heard of fentanyl. It blindsided us. Today, there's more awareness, but I think that people don't recognize how easy it is for kids to get their hands on this, and how deadly fentanyl is. So first of all, thank you for being here. That's the first step, is just educating yourself, and share this information with whoever you can. Model the behavior you want to see. Think about what your kids are seeing whenever you're stressed out, whenever you've had a bad day of work. How do you handle stress? Do you go to the gym? Do you meditate? Do you, call a friend? Make sure that you're modeling the behaviors that you want your kids to take, because they're watching us all the time. With the drugs, make sure you're staying current and have regular conversations with your kids. Hopefully this will be a starting point for you. Again, go back to that video that unfortunately we weren't able to show you today, but it's just a 4-minute video that you can watch together with your child to get the conversation going, especially going into summer vacation. Summer vacation tends to be a time when kids are more likely to experiment. It's a great time to start this conversation. Whenever you're talking to your kids, ask questions and don't judge. These kids, it's a different generation. They have a lot more stresses. They have a lot more better access to information. They know a lot. So make sure that you're just listening and giving them opportunity to share what they're thinking. Recognize that kids' stress is real, and be compassionate when they're expressing their stress and asking for help. Again, just listen. I encourage you to monitor social media. With social media, kids can get their hands on things much quicker. They're learning things much quicker. The flow of information is just dramatically different than when we grew up, and we need to kind of know what's going on social media so we can make sure that they're making good choices there. So use the tools that are out there that social media companies provide. Make sure you learn what platforms your kids are on, and get their passwords and make sure you're looking at them. Look out for signs of stress, mental health issues, substance issues, and take them seriously if you're seeing any signs. Don't be afraid to get help. More than ever, there's more and more resources that are available to parents and to young people. And so make sure that you use those resources. Mental health issues, dealing with stress, it can be hard. And as parents, we don't always have the answers. So don't be afraid to reach out for help. We encourage every family to have naloxone in their homes. just like you would have Band-Aids, aspirin, anything else you have in your medicine cabinet. Naloxone is a lifesaver. There's no danger of having it in your medicine cabinet. If you accidentally administer it to somebody, it's not going to harm them. The only thing it can do is to save a life. And even if you don't think that your kid will ever need it, you don't know what's in the backpack of a friend that's coming through that door, or even have one in your car. You don't know if you're going to be, at the mall, at a concert, wherever. Have one in your purse or your car at all times. You may end up using it. And then we encourage parents to spread awareness. We as parents, we shouldn't think of ourselves as islands. We're a community, and if our community is safer, then we're all going to be safer. So talk about this with your friends, your neighbors. Post this on social media. Follow Song for Charlie and like and share our content, and that will help you to raise awareness. Just for parents, other resources we like, the Ad Council has some campaigns that have been great resources. There's a youth campaign called The Real Deal on Fentanyl that's a good education campaign, so that can be used in addition to our You Need to Know video. They also have a campaign called Drop the F-Bomb, and it gives parents resources and tools to open conversations with their kids. We know how hard it is to talk to kids about hard topics, and the Ad Council is there to help. There are some community resources that are great. Connecticut has You Think You Know. Washington has Laced and Lethal. Natural High is a national organization that has some great resources on their website. And just because these are not necessarily from your community, look what's out there. Your community might not yet have fentanyl awareness campaigns. Don't be afraid to look at other communities. This is something that's hitting everywhere across the US. And so just find anything that looks good and that you think would be helpful. Also, just so you know, coming in June, an organization called Clear Alliance will be creating, or we will be launching, a free online counterfeit pill education course. And that is made for parents, schools, other youth-based organizations. It will be about a 45-minute video that really educates on what is going on, that can be used for youth, parents, whoever is interested. In terms of keeping your community safe, we encourage people to ask your schools what they are doing. Some schools, unfortunately, haven't really made much progress on raising awareness in their communities. And so really a push from a parent or from kids, from students is going to help. If you do talk to your schools, I encourage you to share with them. There's a US Department of Education webinar that was done in January and February, and I would encourage you to share those webinars, those fentanyl webinars, to help educate them on what is going on, and also to provide them resources. Unfortunately, not all schools are aware of those webinars. Also, Song for Charlie has a middle school and high school toolkit that has a lot of great resources that you can share. I encourage you to do the same. Share resources with youth groups, sports leagues, any sort of youth-centric organizations that you're involved in. This message, the more people who are talking to these kids about the risks of pills and making better choices in terms of how to deal with mental health issues, the better. So this hopefully is a message that they can hear from their coaches, from youth group leaders, from if they go to counseling or some sort of somebody who's helping them with their math, whatever. Just any youth-based organizations could use this information. Again, keep up to date with trends in your area and spread the word on social media. Now, I'm going to pivot a little bit to schools, because I think schools need to be a big part of the solution of this problem. First of all, we know that perception of harm can be a protective factor. As Laura showed, that 2/3 of students today, 2/3 of high school students today don't have the information they need to make a good choice if someone is offering them a pill online or at a party. So we need to get that number up. We know that kids, they don't use heroin, cocaine because they know how dangerous it is. We need fentanyl to be the same thing. They need to know how dangerous it is so they can make good choices. So one thing that we try to convey is that teaching about fentanyl is drug education and should complement existing evidence-based prevention programs. So some schools have said to us, well, they're waiting for evidence-based programs, fentanyl programs, from their traditional avenues of drug education. Unfortunately, that could take years to happen. And so schools need to teach about fentanyl just the way they teach about cocaine, heroin, prescription pills. They just need to teach them just like it's another drug. And then, the evidence-based prevention strategies, refusal skills, etc., those would apply to fentanyl as well. So there's no need to wait for a fentanyl specific program. You can get that going, and then those programs will be developed, and then you can transition to that. We don't want to wait because kids are dying today. There are free classroom resources that exist, and you can use them standalone or integrate them into your existing curriculum. They're there. We point to them on the Song for Charlie website, and they're from multiple different sources. And again, as I mentioned, the U.S. Department of Education did a webinar series, and I encourage anyone that's in an educational setting, school setting, whether you're an administrator or a health teacher or principal, whatever, I encourage you to take a look at those webinars if you haven't seen them already. Now, one thing that we see often is that there's schools who are immediately putting Narcan in place and training their staff and maybe sending a parent email or two about this issue. And I think that is great. That is a good first step. But I just want to say that that's not enough. The kids, this is an issue that is here. It is going to stay. It's not going away quickly. And as we know with drug education, kids need to hear a continuous, need to hear it again and again in order for them to really understand the danger and to make sure it's on the forefront of their mind. So another thing we see is that some schools are doing programs just for selected students. So for instance, for high-risk students, and I think that is great. I think people who are in a high-risk community, perhaps they have ACEs or some other issue, some other circumstances that make them high risk. Yes, make sure that they're educated, but we need to make sure that all students in the whole community is being educated. So, start off small, start off with the staff training and the Narcan, start off with the emails, but make sure you're progressing up the line here. So student assemblies and town halls, that's a way to get to a lot of people, big audiences. Make sure we encourage schools to integrate annual fentanyl and, I will say, synthetic drug education into classrooms. This is something that kids need to be seeing every year. And again, this should be a part of a holistic primary prevention program. We know that just awareness isn't enough. They need to have a holistic primary prevention so that they know how they can take care of their mental health. They have refusal skills. They have all the other prevention strategies that we know work, that help to keep kids from trying drugs. And then, ideally, we would love for schools to get to the point where it's peer-to-peer programs. Laura mentioned about her local schools doing PSAs and having kids talking to kids. We know that kids look to their peers. We know that kids are more likely to listen to kids than some other people sometimes. And so the peer-to-peer programs, hopefully schools can get to the point where they have those. And of course, involve students wherever you can. If you're doing a town hall or even emails or social media campaigns, you can involve kids all along that spectrum. Now for schools, Song for Charlie does have a middle school and high school toolkit. It has classroom instruction materials that are from various sources. Beaverton School District is one of them who created one. Ad Council, DEA, all sorts of links there. Video resources, assembly materials, all sorts of resources in our middle school and high school toolkit. We encourage you to look at that. Song for Charlie, we also have a Fentanyl Fight Club, which is our youth awareness site. So encourage schools to share that in their community. Again, just if you look at our website, you'll see video resources, data, links to resources we like, all sorts of information there. As I mentioned earlier, in the parent portion, I mentioned that the Clear Alliance counterfeit pill education course is a great resource for parents. It's a great resource for schools as well. It is going to be free. It was funded by the Oregon and Idaho HIDA, so that this is classroom education that was developed by Clear Alliance, who has been nationally recognized for their drug education programs. And so it is science-based. Everything is researched. They encourage critical thinking. They talk about refusal skills. It is a program that is tailored to be used in a classroom, if you like. And so it is about a 45-minute module, animated. And it meets national health standards. So I really encourage you to keep an eye on Clear Alliance and take a look at that training whenever it's available next month. In addition, Song for Charlie will be providing some additional educational videos this summer so that you can use them going into next school year. Again, the Ad Council has some fabulous resources that can be used by schools. Their Real Deal on Fentanyl campaign, in particular, has some classroom lessons that schools might be interested in using. They have chemistry, economics, and health lessons that are free for anybody to use. And then again, the Drop the F-Bomb parent campaign also is something perhaps you share with your community, so that parents have resources to talk to young people about fentanyl. Again, we do have a lot of resources from our federal partners. DEA, CDC, CADCAT all have resources that are free to use, and I encourage you to look at those. And some resources, school-related resources from Oregon. The Oregon Health Authority and the Oregon Department of Education have developed a fentanyl and opioid response toolkit for schools. Even if you're in a different state, you might find some helpful resources there that really can be used by anybody. And then Beaverton School District created a whole fake and fatal campaign that they have made available to anybody who would like to use it. It includes middle and high school lesson materials that they developed. They will actually be updated shortly. The ones that are there right now are 2 years old, but they're updating those content any day now. They will also have graphics and sample town hall, community conversation, all sorts of information there. Kind of want to end up in the next couple of slides talking about National Fentanyl Awareness Day. On May 9th is a National Day of Awareness, and really the whole purpose of this day is to spread awareness, educate people about what is going on with fentanyl in the communities across the U.S. and how it is impacting youth. So I encourage you, on May 9th to share, follow Song for Charlie, follow Fentanyl Awareness Day, share posts, do your part in educating your community and raising awareness in your community, just even by sharing social media what is going on. And if you feel comfortable, you can also ask your employer if they're willing to share as well, because we're trying to get awareness out any way we can. Also on National Fentanyl Awareness Day, there is a series of webinars that are free, available to anybody who's interested. And so perhaps you can watch one of these. I encourage you to go to the NFAD website or follow on social media, and you can sign up to any of these. You can see at the top there's another one, what parents need to know about fentanyl poisonings and overdoses. We have a few doctors who will be talking about it there. So, I'm sure they will bring a little bit of a different perspective than Laura and I, and I'm sure even, we'll be learning stuff from that. So encourage you to look at those webinars. And so action steps for National Fentanyl Awareness Day. Again, spread the word any way you can. Follow us on social media. Follow Operation Parent and Song for Charlie. We will both be posting on social media, and you can share those. I encourage you to watch the You Need to Know video that you learned about earlier in the presentation. Watch that on National Fentanyl Awareness Day. Talk to your kids about it. Share that with your social media community or wherever you talk. Have a conversation with your teen. You can do that tonight. You can do that on Fentanyl Awareness Day. It should be a continuous conversation. If you see articles coming across on the news, or if you're hearing stories, make sure you're sharing it with your teens so that they know it's in your community. They know this is a real danger that is out there. And yeah, I think generally just whenever you are talking with your teen, just make it a part of the normal conversation. Make sure it's a calm and casual chat. You want to educate them, but not necessarily raise alarm. And you want to make sure that you're keeping the flow of information, making sure that they know that you're open to conversation. So we're gonna open it up to questions through here. If you have any questions, I encourage you to go ahead and put them in the chat. And Laura and I just want to thank you for listening in to this information. Hopefully you've learned something, and hopefully this will be a great resource for you and your families and your organizations. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. I knew right where you were going with that presentation, but I continue to learn more every time you speak about fentanyl. I'm going to tell you some of the positive comments that people placed in the chat. I cannot read them all because there were so many. But right before I do that, in case we have people popping off, we have so much confidence in both of you and the lives that you're saving. It's incredible. And I'm so thankful for your work and your heart and your courage. So keep doing what you're doing, and we're going to help you in every way that we can. We want to let folks know that we also believe our handbooks are saving lives. And it's unfortunate, but also fortunate that we have fentanyl in the elementary handbook now to get parents to start thinking about that message very early on. So we invite anyone who's live with us on the webinar or views it in the next couple of days to take advantage of 23% off our handbooks. We offer our webinars for free, as well as we cover free shipping, because we believe in these handbooks so much and are seeing that they are saving lives by giving parents really great deep information. You can use the offer for an individual or a bulk order, and all you need to do is go to operationparent.org/shop and enter the code NO23, and you could have parent handbooks in your hands to help get great information out to parents about prevention. And so we wanted to make sure if anyone's popping off that they know that. And then so I'll give you some of the feedback. I'll give you the rest later, but thank you so much for sharing these very hard stories. Having a son and two daughters in my 20s, I'm moved to tears as you're speaking lovingly about your sons. You're both incredibly courageous. My heart goes out to both of your families. You're both so strong. This is a life-saving presentation. This would never, the world will never be the same without your beautiful boys. So thank you for what you're doing and letting us get to know them through you. We do have several great questions that I'd like to see if you could help point parents in the right direction. One mom did say she wants folks to know that the messaging needs to keep broadening. She lost her son to what they think was marijuana laced with fentanyl. And so she's asking that we continue to broaden the message as we're looking at things. It's in her family situation. It was not just that one pill can kill. It was also a potentially marijuana situation. Um, and then there is a great person in our audience that was training a Native American tribe on naloxone, and they weren't prepared for a grieving mom to be present. And so this person's kindly asking both of you, based on what you've been through, what are some resources out there for families that are grieving the loss of their young ones?
You know, that's a hard one. You know, I know that there's groups. Compassionate Friends is a national organization that is for parents who have lost a child. It is not necessarily fentanyl specific, but I know that there's a lot of people who find that as a good resource. You know, I don't know of a national organization that really is. There's Facebook groups, and of course they all have different vibes, and so you have to kind of find one that's right for you. But I don't know of a national grief organization that's really for just parents of fentanyl. Laura, do you know of anything?
Yeah, it is so personal, like you said. I know that there's an author, David Kessler, who is very astute on grief. I personally have listened to some of his work. I know a lot of parent because he already was in the grief space, and then he lost a child of his own as well. So he's really able to speak to that. I know he's got a lot of really good resources. And yeah, it's in check in your local community. Sometimes there are grief groups run, through a local church or through organizations locally. I know for me, it has helped to be in communion in person, with other parents. Unfortunately, there's a lot of us out there now that have lost kids to fentanyl, and so it can be these people might be surprised how many parents that are local to them have been through this, and it might be something worth starting, putting those feelers out locally and putting something together, because unfortunately there are now enough of us that have been impacted by fentanyl that, and it is a very kind of specific, sort of way. It's a new crisis. It's a new dynamic. It's often there's trauma involved, and obviously in finding your child, and so
Absolutely, so much.
And
I
Michelle, can we
know,
go back to the marijuana comment? Yeah.
absolutely, yes.
And I'd like to, first of all, my heart goes out to the moms who are online who lost kids as well. I'm, sorry, we're all part of this club together. I did want to mention the vapes and marijuana because that is something that we are watching closely and have been talking to various resources to try to understand what's going on and understand the scope. And from what I understand is that it is happening and it is being reported in isolated instances. It is out there. From what I understand, law enforcement is having a hard time confirming that this is happening in their labs. And so the number of instances where they actually have lab results that prove that it is happening at the actual law enforcement and DEA level is small. And that's not to say that it isn't happening, but what I'm being told by our partners is that it is happening, but it's on a widespread basis. And so I think that parents need to understand that it is a risk. But I don't want people to be panicking because it is not as widespread as the pills or the cocaine, marijuana, or sorry, the cocaine, heroin, and other the pills being laced and put, the fentanyl being put in those. But it is, especially with vapes and marijuana, it is a possibility. So people need to understand that it's a risk. But right now it's a lower risk. So, but we're watching it closely and keep people updated.
That's great advice, Jen. And Laura, speaking about also what you were mentioning about the grief and resources, um, speaking with Aaron with Love for the Logan Foundation, we were speaking about resources for siblings. There's so many siblings that are also impacted. So if anybody in the chat has come across great sibling resources, we know that that's a, an area that needs to be further developed and available. Um, okay, so one person in a school system used the Fentanyl video at a high school during lunch sessions as a part of Mental Health Awareness Day.
Okay.
And
Great.
she said it was so well received, and the students were engaged. And they had so many questions following that, what I would consider to be a bit of passive programming, but very effective. It sounds like. So way to go. That is
That's great.
awesome.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
and then someone asked if the temperature in the car affects Narcan.
Yeah, the temperature in the car can, and even, there's an expiration date on Narcan as well. But what I've been told by people in the medical profession is that it should still have, be effective. It may not be as effective as if it were kept at room temperature, but that, that shouldn't prevent you from using it. So it's not going to harm anybody. It may be a little bit less effective. So even if it's expired, even if it's been in the car, just go ahead and try it because it's better than not having anything.
Exactly, exactly. Folks are also asking if nonprofits are able to get Narcan for free, or how to do that. If you're not sure, someone's welcome to put that in the chat as well.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in that area. We do know that the FDA has approved for Narcan to become an over-the-counter medicine, and that it will be widely available in beginning at the end of the summer, and that will help to drive prices down. And we should see Narcan in gas stations, grocery stores, basically anywhere. And so it will become more easy to get Narcan, but how to get it, funding for it, et cetera, I don't have information on that, unfortunately.
So I know that you can check with your local health departments. They definitely know and likely have some on site. So that would be a great place to start. Um, What about, are you recommending that schools have naloxone with the school nurse, or do you feel like that's a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. I think having Narcan in multiple spots around campus. I know in our local area, a lot of districts are putting it in with their AED boxes, having Narcan in theirs, so the teachers and staff know that that can be accessed, in those kind of central areas. It is very easy to administer, so it doesn't require a lot of training or that type of thing. So I think the more accessible it can be throughout a campus, the better.
Yeah. Interestingly, LA Unified School District recently approved for all students to be able to carry Narcan. So that really is an indication of how safe it is. It is, there's no risk of somebody carrying it. It can only bring good.
Very good, very true. Um, okay, I had one. Oh yes, here's our closing question. What do you recommend for folks that are trying to balance educating teens versus that giving teens ideas? Like you don't want to give teens too much information.
Yeah.
And
I think you need
two
to
are the
think
perfect
about,
ones to address that.
yeah, I think you need to, think about the appropriate message for the appropriate age. I think, for instance, in elementary school, I think you can have generic conversations about it's not safe to take pills from a stranger. I don't know if you need to mention too much about fentanyl at that age. And I think that honestly, the messaging for different ages is still being researched. But we do know that, kids, whether or not you talk to them, they're going to hear about things in the news. They're going to hear about it. They're going to see it on social media. They're going to hear about it from your friends. So it's important to have these conversations with them so that they're getting the perspective that you want them to hear. And also so you can add your family's values to that messaging. So you want to set limits around drug use. You want to tell them the dangers. You want to encourage them to open up about their mental health and if they're struggling. So it's an overall prevention message. It's not just fentanyl. And also, as we discussed in this presentation, remind them that teenage drug use is not the norm, and that most kids are choosing not to reach for drugs because the social norms is an important important aspect of this, and kids look to what their friends are doing. So you need to remind them that although they may be seeing this on social media, they may be seeing drug references whenever they watch TV or whenever they listen to music, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the norm. So you need to remind them of that. So
Yeah, exactly. And just like Jen said, I mean, we can't pretend that our kids aren't getting information from other sources. They're more plugged in than any generation ever has been before. A quick Google search, a quick, I mean, things pop up, ads pop up, on their social media. So we need to make sure we're a part of that information. They're not being misinformed and misled. And like Jen had mentioned many times, because it's so important that when we're open and non-judgmental and we approach it with love and kindness and compassion, that that hopefully the messaging that will stick with them is what they're getting from us.
Beautifully stated. We've gotta address this with grace, and talk to our teens with a lot of grace and understanding, but also have them have a sense of urgency to understand you don't get a lot of chances with this, and balancing the fact that their brain is still developing. They are likely to take some risk based on that. And so, just trying to balance all that out with having them understand, not just for themselves personally, but also, they're protecting their friends and potentially being the brave person to have a conversation with a friend that might be taking a risk. So I love what you're saying about just, have the conversations. And like you said earlier, Jen, not just as often, as often, frequent and often, and shorter is probably better for your teen to keep it short and sweet. um, all right. Well, thank you guys so much. We do want to direct local families to our website to also learn about, unfortunately, one more local story of a young man who was lost to fentanyl. So we have a really great tribute to Wyatt, Julie Hoffman's son, up on our website. So if you're local and you want to be connected with a mom who's moving and shaking in the Louisville, Kentucky community, um, or if you're looking for a mom who could come and also speak locally at a school, she'd be happy to help with that. We want to also let folks know we've designed and are launching a drug prevention kit. And so this can be utilized at schools. It teaches middle schoolers or high schoolers vocabulary about drug use and what it means, and also, most importantly, refusal skills, practicing ahead of time on how to refuse anything that might come their way and strengthen their muscle with that. So we invite you to follow Song for Charlie, of course, on all of their social media platforms. And that reminds me, Jen, a lot of requests for how to get on an email list about the summer, the Clear Alliance partnership. We had lots of requests of folks wanting to know how to get on an email list with you.
Great. I don't know if Clear Lines has an email set up or a newsletter set up, but if you do go to Song for Charlie, if you sign up for our newsletter, whenever that becomes available, we'll put it in our newsletter. So we will definitely announce it.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Song for Charlie has an amazing, vibrant social media community. So we want you to go link up there today, as well as follow us on our platforms. Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn is where you can find us most. And in light of that, we were going to do just a quick drawing for those of you that participated in sharing this presentation out for us. We have a Song for Charlie themed colored bowl here, and we're going to draw the winner from the social media contest. And you're going to receive this picnic blanket, Operation Parent Picnic Blanket. It's coming your way. So thank you for sharing and spreading the word from both Song for Charlie, Laura, Jen, all of us. We appreciate you getting more
Thank you.
folks on with us today. So we are going to share this picnic blanket with Shenandoah County Community, and they shared it out on Facebook. So that is Chenango County Community. So thanks for sharing. We appreciate you. And thank you to all of you all for joining us. Our June 13th webinar is up on the website. So we invite you to use this QR code or go to the website directly and go ahead and register for our June 13th webinar. And Laura and Jen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to partnering on something again very soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle, and everybody at Operation Parent. It was just wonderful working with you.
Our pleasure for sure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.